Sloppy Spoilers with your host, DT2. All right, welcome to another episode of Sloppy Spoilers. I'm your host, David Taylor II. You know me as DT2 Comics Chat on Twitter. I want to welcome my guest host, David Nemesis Howard. What's up, Dave?
Hey, how's everybody doing? Greetings from a slightly cold California at the moment.
And we want to welcome Jeff Bracey. What's up, Jeff?
Well, greetings from a slightly cold South Carolina.
I'm sensing a theme here because Chicago's not all that cold, though, but we can deal with it. So today we're going to be talking about the second episode of Harley Quinn. It's being broadcast on DC Universe streaming platform, animated series. And right off the bat, I want to say it's amazing to me how, well, just to be succinct, this whole thing feels like the first season of Supergirl from the aspect of that whole first season was, I'm not my cousin, I'm not my cousin, I'm not my cousin, I'm not my cousin. And so far, these first two episodes have been like, you know, I'm not the Joker's sidekick, I'm not in his shadow, I'm my own person, blah, 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 blah. But everything that happens has to do with the fact that you're the Joker's ex and his sidekick or whatever. So, I don't know, you know, if they have that irony built in or what. What do you guys think? Go ahead, Jeff.
Oh man, so hearing that we're going to do the pod tonight, and having missed last week, I watched episode 1 and 2 back to back, and I can't even begin to express how much I hate this cartoon. I mean, I just really hate it. Watching this cartoon.
Now that it's been said, the floodgates are open now.
Oh yeah. It's like there's no holding back. Everything I'm hearing that people are expressing that they don't like about Birds of Prey, I think is happening right here in this animation, because it's clearly being tied into the movies. You know, they got characters like Bane. Even though he's dressed like comic book Bane, he sounds like movie Bane. They're trying to tie it all into the greater DCEU. And so the glorious emancipation of Harley Quinn got its jump start here in the animation. And wow, this is so bad. It's so bad. I was not expecting like the level of just outright ridiculousness, over the top violence, the gore, the F-bombs left and right. I'm like, you know, the difference between something like this and say Deadpool is Deadpool was actually fun. It was actually funny, and like every moment of this cartoon for me is just cringeworthy. It's so hard. It's trying so hard to be its own message that it's just completely unwatchable. There's like, I will say the second episode was better for me than the first episode, because there were some fun jokes in the bar mitzvah, but for the most part, like I'm just struggling to get through this thing. It's so cringy.
Well, most of that is definitely what me and Dave said before. Those were our sentiments exactly. So, Dave, go ahead. What do you think about this episode?
Well, I think the operative word here is cringy. I'll be honest. I've tried to watch this series on and off since the day it came out, and I shared a little bit that the first episode we talked about. And if it wasn't for recording this podcast, I wouldn't give this show the time of day. And,
Same.
You know, if you like it and this is your cup of tea, hey, cool. You know, enjoy it. But this just is not anything I want to watch on a whole host of levels, and I'm sure we're going to get there. So I don't want to go into details of specifics right now. But I think Jeff hit it really on the head. I mean, it really is cringy. It's trying so hard.
You know what's...
Go ahead.
You know, it's weird. It's like watching it. It's the style of humor they're going for is so extreme. It's like as if Bob Camp and John Kay got a hold of a DC property and trying to squeeze that Ren and Stimpy humor into Harley Quinn with like all this identity politics jammed up all inside as well.
But the other thing is that, I don't know if Dave is planning on going here. I hope he does. But I think your comment about Deadpool is right on. And I think if this is really what they're going for, then they need to be judged against Deadpool for what he does. And I'll just say this right up front. One of the things that makes Deadpool's brand of crude and obscene humor, and let's be perfectly honest, Deadpool can be very crude and very obscene, but oftentimes it's self-referential.
Yeah.
It's type of humor, it's not taking himself too seriously. If it's mean-spirited, it's it's just different. I really have to think about how to put my finger on it exactly, but it is not the same type of thing. And there are some things that happen in the bar mitzvah that I thought were funny, but some things that I was just like, I can't believe this. And just 2 points before, in summary, before we get into more depth. One is that I'm 2 episodes in, and my favorite character on here is Poison Ivy. She's the only one that I have any time for. And the plant that we talked about last time, Dave, well, the plant went full ghetto this episode, and you were absolutely right on what you said before, in my opinion. And then
that plant is so Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah. And then the other thing I would say about this, lost my train of thought. Well, there was something I was going to say about this with this series, but it's not doing it for me. It's not really my.
That's just your brain trying to protect yourself.
Yeah.
Well, the common thread between everything that was just said was try too hard. And Dave, I can help you put your finger on what you're looking for. I've talked about it before on Twitter, but there's at least 2 components to human behavior. One component is what you do. The second component, however, is the spirit you do it in. And this is what people don't want to understand. Your spirit has a scent the same way your body has a scent. Mm-hmm. So when you come out the shower, you have a scent. When you've been sweating and working or playing a pickup game of basketball, your sweat has a scent. When you pick your favorite cologne. And so you can't really hide that. Whatever it is you smell like, you're kind of smelling it. That's your physical body. Well, your spirit works exactly the same way. And what you're smelling and what you're feeling is what you guys said. It's the try too hard. Mm-hmm. Deadpool is not trying too hard. Deadpool is kind of saying what it's saying. It is what it is. And it's not trying to bash or put someone down or preach. Mm-hmm. It's just trying to be crude and funny and vulgar because that's kind of the flavor of the character.
Yeah.
This cartoon is trying to man bash, man replace. They even use the phrase strong, independent woman. They come out and say it at least twice in this episode.
How many times?
Okay. Right. That just reminded me of my point, if I could interrupt for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
I think one of the things that really bugs me, especially about this episode, because they said strong, independent woman, I'm a father of 2 teenage daughters. I understand that they are not the same around me as they might be around their friends, but I am confident in saying that my daughters act nothing like that and they're a strong, independent woman, and I would be ashamed of them. I'd be ashamed of my son if he did some of the things that were going on in here. And I realize it's a cartoon and everything, but this cartoon is preaching at me about being a strong, independent woman and girl power and everything, and it's like, God, no, that is not going to be my daughters, and my daughters love Harley Quinn. I'm keeping this as well. I told you in the first episode of Sloppy Spoilers for this, my daughter saw 5 minutes of it and walked out. She didn't want to see any of it. So,
well, hold on one second. Also, as we talked about before, we've said it here, the tie-in to the movie. Now, if you look at the trailers that they cut for Birds of Prey, which that movie has no business being named Birds of Prey. Yeah. It's the emancipation of Harley Quinn, and they should have left it right there. But if you look into the trailer, what is Harley's dialogue in the trailer? I've dumped the Joker. I'm sick of the Joker. He's sick of me. I'm done with him, whatever. But Gotham ought to be afraid of me because I'm Harley bleeping Quinn. That is what this whole thing is dipped in, steeped in, rolled in. that, and this is the essence of the, I guess I want to call it the wokeness, and that is that you ought to be paying attention to Me Too. You ought to like Me Too. You ought to spend all that money on Me Too. And that's what people that believe that don't get. They don't understand
Yeah.
people have the right to like what they like, and people have the right to spend their time and their money the way they want to. And just because you want to be as popular as some other character doesn't mean you're going to be. And it doesn't mean that people are sexist if they respond that way. See, that's the whole issue. And this cartoon is pretty much the embodiment, the epitome of that kind of thought. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, it's so funny because that actually adds a little bit to what I was going to say. Say I had this thought about like they're breaking the classic rule of a visual medium, be it like comic books or movies or animation. You don't have to say like, in the first episode, like, oh, Harley, you're so smart, you're so strong, you're an independent woman, and they do it again here. You don't have to do that. All you have to do is show it. It's self-evident. Like when you see her beating up 5 guys, she's tough as nails. If she outwits the bad guys, she's smart. You don't have to validate that. You don't have to verbalize it. And they're trying to. It's like with current day, some of these characters like Captain Marvel in the comics who just fails and fails and fails. They're trying to force us to like this version of Harley Quinn. When the thing is, if you go back to the '90s, fans fell in love with that character without being forced to try and like her.
Yeah, and I guess I want to clarify one thing because I was thinking about it. It's like, okay, I like Deadpool. I share that with my son, but we enjoyed Deadpool when he was older, obviously. But we like Deadpool because it's a break from the norm. It's not being held. I mean, let's be honest. If my son acted or talked like Deadpool did, he'd be in a lot of trouble. But it's not held up that way. Deadpool is the way he is, and we all know who he is and what he's about, and we're fine with that. But I guess that's my real problem is that
he's not being held up as a role model.
Yeah, exactly.
So this episode opens with a shot of the Legion of Doom headquarters from the Super Friend show, kind of, which I thought was interesting. So everybody's there, and I want you to notice another common thread. Every male in this cartoon is a buffoon. The closest people that have in maybe any kind of presence are the Joker and maybe the Penguin. Maybe. But Scarecrow and Bane and Two-Face and just every male is just absolutely incompetent. And I think you said in the opening that even though this is comic book Bane's costume, this is Batman and Robin's Bane's personality, a speech pattern, decision making. He's just a buffoon. And see, so once again, that's another piece of evidence of the try too hard, men are bad, men are stupid, blah, 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 blah. They're just beating you over the head constantly with these themes. And so then Harley and Ivy are watching TV, and so the plant goes full ghetto. The plant just, I'm just like, okay, I mean, I don't even know what to say. It just goes full ghetto, and it felt like I was watching something from the 70s. It's like, oh, you need to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Do it. Get up off that. And I'm like, really?
Go start doing that head wave thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Really? Okay. All right. Well, okay. So it's feeling a little like South Park in here. Nothing is sacred. But anyway, so Joker jumps on Good Morning Gotham, wires a bomb up to the host, and once again talks about how he dumps Harley and blah, 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 blah. Now, the one good thing I did like in this episode, if you can believe it, is the voice of the Joker. I think it's a perfect combination between Mark Hamill and Cesar Romero, and I completely buy it. I like it. It's the only thing I did like, but I did like the way the Joker sounded, because pretty much after Hamill and Conroy, I never thought I'd like to hear the Joker again. But this voice kind of nails it. But other than that, okay, so Harley breaks the TV, and so she's got to go crash the party, and she's got to prove, there it is again, she's got to prove that she's, fine by herself. I don't need the Joker. I'm my own person. I'm my own villain. And anybody that knows anything about anything knows that if that were true, you wouldn't have to prove it. So what do you guys think about the whole premise, the whole idea behind this episode, like what she's going to do? Start with Nemesis.
Well, I think you hit it right on the head, because we've been talking about the fact that this show is not shy at all about telling us that this is a show about, female empowerment and girl power and everything. And that's fine. That's what you're going to do. But then the very first, I'm not a big fan of what I'm seeing on screen for a whole host of other reasons, but I'm not against female empowerment. But the very first thing they do is have Harley Quinn. I mean, if I'm thinking like them, Harley Quinn is demanding that she get validation from her male contemporaries. That's female empowerment. And it's like, it's really odd to me, because even though the Joker is acting like a total jerk and is making excuses and trying to pretend like it was he who was the dump, all of that, it's juvenile and everything. It's odd, because I'm sitting there looking at it going, of these two, the Joker is the one that's acting more quote unquote normal in this breakup of a relationship, even though he's being completely ridiculous. So it's just like, I don't understand where this is going, and it all goes back to what I seem to be talking about too often. We all seem to be talking about too often with TV shows, is that oftentimes they decide on where they want to go, what certain scenes they want to have, and the theme they want to have, without building up plot and acts and everything else and having it progress. So they knew the message they wanted to send. They had some cut scenes that they knew that they wanted to get in there, and then they're just pigeonholing everything around it. And, from a structure standpoint, it's almost a hot mess. I think it is a hot mess.
Go ahead, Bracey.
I agree. It feels like a bunch of scenes strung together very loosely. They've obviously kind of built a story around it. And, referring back to what both you guys have implied, about like Poison Ivy being the best character on the show and Harley needing validation, like why? Why does she need that? When Poison Ivy again and again and again, the whole show tells her, like, don't do it. Like, let's just hang out. Let's go do our own thing. Can we leave? It's like, what? Poison Ivy has nothing to prove.
Right.
And that's what Harley should be taken away. She shouldn't have anything to prove. She can go prove it when she's out doing her own crimes or whatever, instead of like having to bust up a bar mitzvah. And like you said, like all the male characters are utter buffoons. When you had the perfect foil in Kite Man, he's the only one you need to make fun of. Nobody takes Kite Man seriously. Right. And actually, half the jokes in the show that I like involved Kite Man. But of course, they had to work in some moments where he was pretty woke too. But like, come on, every time he opened up that kite and that kid got knocked into the punch bowl, I was laughing. It was like, why couldn't we had a little bit more of that if you wanted to like inject some humor in there? Because that character is 10 times funnier than Harley Quinn, and she's supposed to be the star of this whole thing.
Plus Ivy's reactions to him.
Yeah, it was classic.
Those girl power, messages of, I don't want to be hit on all the time and everything. It's there, but they weren't shoved in my face. They were natural. They were seamlessly blend in. Whoever's voicing Harley does that. It does it perfectly. That female exasperator is like, oh God, get away from me. It's
how funny was it when he gave the kids the pheromones? I thought he was just trolling her.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you dumped me? All right, you don't want any time with me? It's like, I'm going to troll you, have all these horny 13-year-olds come after you.
Yeah.
And like, it didn't quite go that way, but I was like, oh, that was actually pretty damn funny if that's the way like the joke had continued to go.
Yeah, you contrast that interaction between Ivy and Kite Man versus the interactions that Harley has through the episode with Scarecrow, Two-Face, which is horrible. I mean, Scarecrow was bad, Two-Face is horrible, and Bane was the worst. And then the Penguin's son, which I'll get to eventually. But,
this is no way to treat the guy who broke the bat.
Yeah. They were really cringy.
Right. Going back to the top of the scene, you're right. The whole thing was cringy beyond belief. But going back to the top of the scene, if you notice at the entrance that Harley into the place, it's just like the movie, and it's
I was about to say, it's such a movie entrance.
And got the glasses and the sparkles and the champagne and everything. So once again, they're trying to say in a very non-subtle way that she's a stupid superstar, blah 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 blah. But if that's true, you don't have to prove it. But as soon as they flipped the lights on and I saw it was about mitzvah, it just kind of, my heart sank. Because I'm like, if this was any other cartoon, like if this was like Justice League Unlimited, I know it would be funny.
Yeah.
But in this cartoon, it's about to be vulgar in a way that even with my grown man self, I don't really want to hear. Because I don't like the idea of adolescent kids having this kind of humor being normalized around them. Because where do you go from here if this is what's funny when you're 12?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got 6 years to be a teenager, and this is how you start that period. But this kind of stuff, and that's what, as soon as the lights came on and all the kids are wide-eyed, and I'm like, oh no. I'm like, oh my goodness, where is this gonna go? So they bust in, they see it's a bunch of kids, and everybody freezes, and the villains are there or whatever. And see, this might sound funny, but any self-respecting villain would have turned around and walked out. He would have said, I don't need to be crashing a party with a bunch of 12 and 13-year-olds. Really, this is beneath me.
Right.
They should have broke camp and gone. They should have done like the animated series. Do a crime spree if you're going to do something like that. That's the grown woman thing to do.
Yeah, that Harley Ivy relationship was so much better in the Paul Dini series. So much better. Yeah. And can somebody add, like, I've always been more of a Marvel guy than a DC guy, but I've got more than a passing knowledge of Poison Ivy. But why does the plant talk? Has she ever had talking plants ever?
No.
Not as a common thing. No, that's pretty much particular to this show.
The only time she's ever had anything that was a quote unquote talking plant is there's an episode of Batman.
She had like the plant clones then.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, I thought that was the only time. It was like, and the whole fact that like the plant is ghetto is like, what, plants don't have a race.
Yeah, well.
That plant didn't grow up hard on the streets. What's up with this?
Yeah. Again, that was just so blatant. I was like, okay. And I do agree with your point. Kite Man is the perfect adult foil in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons that we three and anybody from Geekdom would understand is because we always have heroes on the spectrum of super cool to super lame.
Mm-hmm.
That is not new to us. So anytime we're going to dial in a super lame character in the mix, we expect hilarity and foolishness to ensue because that's pretty much what they bring. But you don't have to involve kids in that. If you have kids, the kid it shouldn't be what it ended up being. But anyway, so all of the stuff everything that Ivy didn't want to happen happened. And that was indeed kind of funny with Kite Man. Everything about her not wanting to be hit on and not wanting to be left alone, and some lame-o's going to want to team up with me, and blah, blah, blah. Everything she said she didn't want to happen happened. So I pictured that as what the girls say to each other before they go to the club.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Don't leave me alone. I need a wingman, because if you leave me alone, it won't be the hot guys that come over to me.
Yeah.
It'll be the Kite Mans.
Yeah. And it was funny because, with this scene, the way it opened up, while Kite Man is buffoonish, he's buffoonish because of who he is, the way he acts. He's that overcompensating, quote unquote ladies' man character that's around. It's been around, and there are people like that. But what they did to Bane and to all of the other villains that were in here except the Joker is they just took away their soul. I mean, Bane is an emasculated whiner. Two-Face is
He doesn't say anything.
Yeah. And then Scarecrow is just odd, that he was probably, like I said,
only some of the most terrifying villains Gotham has, and they just ruin them.
And then Penguin was, I don't know, just kind of forgettable,
Yeah.
Well, they focus a little bit more on the Jewish stereotypes.
Right.
So they didn't have black stereotypes. They had very, very heavy Jewish stereotypes.
I didn't want to bring that up.
And let's not forget all the finger banging.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, I'll get there in a minute. There's a whole conversation we need to have about that.
Yeah, the Jewish.
Yes, indeed.
But yeah, so the whole Jewish stereotypes in terms of things you would expect to happen from the kid, from the buck teeth, from the comments from Cobblepot's mother, from Penguin himself. It was all just a big kind of, and I was like, really?
And you know what the funniest part about all of this is that I've already seen this movie. It was a scene in The Wedding Singer. And the Adam Sandler movie was actually less childish, crude, and obscene than this cartoon was, which
yes, it was
unbelievable. So
yeah, so it's like, you know, they're like every awful thing that you wouldn't want to see. It seems to be what they specialize in, and it's not even like South Park. And I think it's because they're using some of our favorite characters from Batman's world to do these awful things and make these awful statements. And I'm like, this is not how I want to see these characters portrayed.
No.
From the aisles to the review station, Undercover Capes brings you all things action figure related. Join host Bob O'Mac as he shares his insights and thoughts on the plastic revolution.
From there, we can move straight into the finger banging conversation.
Oh, God.
Now, talk about super cringe. I'm saying to myself, what message are you sending in terms of, are you trying to be realistic about the way kids talk? Are you doing that whole thing about saying you're not really, grown if you're still a virgin? Are you trying to be as disgusting as possible? But why are you having adults talk to minors about finger banging?
Yeah.
Why? I mean, there's no context where
Right.
that is okay.
I've tried really hard, to stay away from certain like to stray into like social commentary too much a lot of times, but this bothered me so much for so many levels. And the first level is the fact that they think that, the very first people who are talking about this and are being so cavalier about it and cruel is a group of teenage boys. And I'm sorry, yes, teenage boys, we talk frankly about stuff, so do teenage girls, but it bothers me that there's a certain group of people, a certain group of writers who think that men are all out there thinking about assaulting and raping women or whatever it is all the time. And this is what I got from this. It's like, who the hell, obviously you've never been a teenage boy or talked to a teenage boy, because people are not just sitting around talking about crap like this, like they're the Johnny from Cobra, from the Karate Kid. That's the kind of guy that this would be, and those guys are stereotypes. They're not, it bugged me so much. And then just the whole concept is they kept the joke going. They thought this was a great joke, and then they upped the ante on it. And I was just like, oh, yeah, it was beyond cringe. It was one of those moments where I really was like, I don't know if I want to finish this.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, that was first of all, I was like, my jaw dropped when they first hit it, because I'm 51, and I talked about sex as much as any kid who hit puberty.
Mm-hmm.
But until today, I've never actually said the word finger bang in my entire life.
Me neither.
And then like Harley had the up the ante like with finger blast, and like, so kids are going to see this, even though this is like an adult themed cartoon. They're going to be on the internet, finger bang, finger blast, like, oh, look at these interesting videos I found. Like, what are you thinking, DC? And so it's not just to show how crude, the men are buffoons and the teenage boys are completely crude, but then, like you said, they up the ante. And so at the day, the bar mitzvah, where this kid is supposed to be becoming a man, Harley emasculates him in front of the whole crowd. He can't hold his mighty weapon straight. It's starting to dip. It's starting to fall. All the metaphorical imagery is there. All the contextual, yeah, let me take that penis away from you, kid. It's like, oh God knows, guys. Like, once again, I'm just bombarded with you're trying far too hard, and it's not funny. There could have been ways to make it funny, but I don't think setting it in a room full of barely teenage kids was the way to go about it.
And the amazing part is, the title character, our heroine, is the one doing this to a 13-year-old boy, and she's drawn with a look of evil delight on her face.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna speak to that. That's very important. I don't want to gloss over that, but I do want to say this before I get to that. You said it before, and it bears repeating here. Ivy is better than this, but at least she knows it. Ivy is an eco-terrorist. Ivy is obsessed with her plants and her plant life. Ivy is obsessed with making sure that the green part of the earth stays alive at whatever cost. That's kind of her focus. Right. She knows that she's better than the situation she's in, and she's trying to tell Harley the same. And so that's another good thing about the portrayal here, is that Ivy knows that this is way beneath anything she needs to be bothered with. Mm-hmm. That I did like. She's the only character so far, besides the, extreme profanity or whatever, but she's the only character so far that comes away from this, I think, relatively unscathed so far, and still feels like an Ivy I can respect as a supervillain.
Yeah.
But this cartoon, along with the movie, has pretty much trashed any interest I have in Harley Quinn from this point forward. I loved Harley on Batman the Animated Series, and at this point, she's feeling to me like Felicity.
Yeah.
They should have left her where they found her.
Mm-hmm.
We found Ivy as someone who had lost her mind, fallen in love with the Joker, left her life gone crazy to be his sidekick, and was a bit of comic relief, but was kind of, a Bonnie to his Clyde in a really quirky kind of way. That version of Harley is fine. But this one, I can't get with this on any level, which is a good springboard into that thing you said. And I'm going to point it out, and I'm going to call it out every single time I see it, because I can't stand it. I do not listen to people that whine about double standards and then perpetuate them.
Yes.
Because if that had been a male villain of any age or any background, and it stood there and had humiliated a young girl about her changing body, and about maybe, her breasts being too big or too small, or being lopsided, or maybe starting her period, or maybe not knowing how to deal with being an adolescent girl, or maybe you're fat and nobody wants you. You name anything. If a male character had humiliated a 12, 13-year-old girl like that, just, for being 12 or 13, there would be outrage, there would be banning, there would be fines, there would be whatever kind of punishment, there would be Twitter outrage. Mm-hmm. Whatever kind of punishment could be drummed up if a male character, let's say Wolverine did that to Kitty Pryde, because Kitty is Jewish, and Kitty in the comics is from Deerfield. Right. So let's say he's having her bat mitzvah, and Wolverine says those kinds of things to her. And he's making fun of how you're still a virgin, and, you wouldn't know what to do with a man if you had one, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Because remember, they canceled Hank Pym for slapping Janet, and that was wrong. He shouldn't have done it, but it happened one time, and literally that's been the end of him. So if any male character did to a girl what Harley did to this poor boy, and I'm not hearing it from people that are screaming about double standards and what's not fair. I will not hear it when this kind of content is out there. I'm not having it. But that's just me. What do you guys think?
Preach.
Yeah. It you've really said it all, because we know it can't work the other way. It won't work the other way. If somebody tried to do it the other way, a mob had burned down the studio.
Mm-hmm.
And just to be clear, I'm not asking for it to be done the other way. I don't think it should be done at all. So
That's right.
Even in the context of like, oh, she's trying to save her life. This kid's about to shoot her. It's like the whole situation is so inappropriate to start with.
Mm-hmm.
I think about like a scene where a kid was endangering a hero, and I think about Batman Beyond, where like that current Robin had gotten mind messed over by the Joker and Harley Quinn, and how they were goading him on to shooting Batman. Now that was a tense scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you remember that one, was that the Jason Todd one, or which Robin was it at the time? I don't remember.
Was it Tim? I think it was Tim Drake.
Okay, Tim Drake. But I was like, wow, there was. I know it was a different kind of show. They weren't trying to be funny, but that scene to me is just so much better. Watching that struggle, because there was some like kind of funny stuff going on, because you got Joker and Harley, and Tim's being a little funny, like handing them off weapons and like, thanks, sweetie, and stuff like that. But it was so much more impactful than this scene, which is very clearly an allegory for emasculating somebody on the cusp of manhood.
And I have to say, even if you go away from the Harley and Batman the Animated Series and you make her more independent and more risque, I have seen that done well in a number of DC animated properties. You look at Assault on Arkham.
Yes.
She gets the Deadshot, or the other Suicide Squad movie, I think it was Hell to Pay or something like that, where she's funny and out there and doing her thing. You look at her there's any number of animated properties that have come out, animated movies that they've done where Harley has not been that traditional Harley. It was this transition into this new, and she was empowered, and she was part of either Weapon X or Task Force.
Yeah, like how about the one where she ends up banging Robin when she's got him tied down?
Yeah, that was.
And there's such a funny little joke in there where like Batman's giving him the stink eye, and Robin like mumbles like, it's not like you never slept with a supervillain.
It was obvious that Nightwing was attracted to her, and then the two of them were like seducing each other. It was a funny scene, and there was stuff going on in there, but it was not this. This is just, I don't want to be so negative, and I want to stress again, if you like it, this is our criticisms, just like it, but this is not my cup of tea. I do not like this at all. I think we're taking one for the team for Comic Crusaders and Undercover.
Yeah, I mean, like let's face it. Like if we don't think you like what we like, if like we don't like it and you like it, that's fine. We're not going to run around calling you Nazis or something for it. So like don't even go there.
Yeah, right. But yeah, I mean, we've got another 12 episodes of this at least. Man,
it's going to be a long slog.
Yeah. Well, we've got some other stuff we're going to do, so at least we'll get a break. We'll, be able to talk about some more fun stuff. But to key in on what you said before, the idea behind the Batman Beyond Return of the Joker thing is the Joker as a cult leader figure.
Mm-hmm.
Joker reshaping someone in his image and brainwashing them against their will. And when you make it kind of a cult thing, that's a different thing. And when you see the struggle of trying to do what you're told versus what's going on the inside, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
And none of this was about mind control. This wasn't Ivy. The part about where Ivy's toxins get used on the young boys, that was creepy to me too. I'm glad that Ivy spelled out the consequences, and I'm glad that Ivy said, we don't need to do this. Let me go get the antidote. Because once again, she realizes she's better.
I was honestly surprised she cared.
Yeah.
Because she's better than this. She knows that her worldview is bigger than this.
This, for me, this was the one scene that I enjoyed and thought was funny because it played on. I mean, yeah, it was creepy if you think about it. It is a creepy situation, but the fact that it's like Ivy's got to do this. She's trying to make it clear this is not a kiss. Meanwhile, the adolescent boys are like, "Oh, I'm gonna kiss Poison Ivy," and then the one kid comes back in line. It was like there was a little bit of that, undertone to it, but it was, compared to the rest of it, this was, stellar TV like I've never seen before. So
Well,
I thought that was
to
okay.
explain what she was going to do before it happened.
Right.
The comic book science to say, it's a antidote delivery system.
Mm-hmm.
If you know anything about Ivy, this has been her modus operandi since we've known her.
Right.
She
and
gets
Yep.
And the other thing I thought was so funny is that it plays on just, a common joke that is around in a lot of like nerd circles or, fandom and stuff like that, is like, oh, Poison Ivy's going to kiss me. It's like, she's not kissing you. She's just trying to poison you or something, So.
Right. And now another thing I want you guys to notice is how in both of these episodes so far, they've made Harley and Ivy invincible. Now, this is another thing. I'm like, okay, well, I guess we kind of have to go with it because Ivy's never been so powerful to where just, no weapon formed against her could prosper. There were just, no attack is working. But here they're surrounded at point blank range. And somehow now, Ivy's got, the thick plants, and Ivy has an unlimited plant cheat. She can call up a plant big enough and fast enough to do whatever the plot requires wherever she is. I can accept that when she's in her lair, when she's in her garden, but now she can do it anywhere. And Harley.
Yeah, they're just busting up through the floor.
Right. And Harley has been upgraded to Spider-Man levels of speed and strength. And her backflips and her air flips and her whatever. And I'm saying, okay, once again, they're invulnerable now. They're invincible. They can't be hurt. If you notice, they, just all the guns, all the bullets, everything gets stopped. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I guess we have to go with this too, because now you can no longer show women with any weakness or, she did get knocked out by the dart. I'll give her that.
Yeah.
But, do you know what I'm saying? It's
she actually took a few lumps in between this first episode and this episode.
Okay.
So like she does get tagged occasionally, but you still never really feel like she's threatened.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
I think
Ivy's invincible.
I think even having this discussion forces us to take this TV show a little too seriously, because there really is nothing to take serious about it, especially when it comes to like comic stuff. But if I'm gonna take it seriously, it's another example where the writers are not consistent and they're doing things just for the convenience of the plot. And it's like, okay, and the greatest example of this is, you're right that Harley and Ivy are doing all these things. They can take out multiple people at once. Harley never get hit by a bullet or anything like that. Yes, she's gotten some punches, but the Penguin of all people with that damn umbrella cane hit her with tranquilizer dart. When has the Penguin hit anybody with that umbrella? And he took out Spider Harley with it. So it's like, okay, I guess that's what you needed for this scene, for the plot. So you just wrote it in there and didn't even think about it. But like I said, I think that's me overthinking and taking way too seriously this TV show, because I don't even think it concerns them at all to have any comic consistency.
You know why this is happening? This is happening because we've been so inundated with this sort of stuff. It's so prevalent. It's so easy to recognize now that we are practically conditioned to look for it. Before, maybe 5 years back, if you saw something like this, if it popped up in a comic book or a movie or a cartoon or whatever, you'd be like, oh, okay, and you'd have passed on without barely noticing it. But now I find myself unconsciously analyzing stuff like, well, what do they mean by that? And it's like, oh my God, this stuff is so poisoned. Everything that I enjoy, that I find myself unconsciously looking for it, when all I want to do is enjoy the show I'm trying to watch or the book I'm trying to read. It's ridiculous.
And I think that is such an important point, because I think one of the problems, and I hate to reference this, but I'm going to go back to Birds of Prey. One of the problems I have with Birds of Prey is that I'm already in that mode looking for what they're doing in the show, because the showrunners or the movie producers and the actresses came right out and told me that they're making this movie to send a certain message. So it's like you've already taken that ability for you to discover this movie, and with any piece of art, you know, it means something to you internally. You take that away from me.
Well, worse than that, they're already gearing up to blame us if it doesn't perform well. Like, you know, if you men don't go see the movie, it's going to be your fault if it fails.
And
that whole thing. Now that brings up another thing I want to interject here, and that is that when you speak about the ability to just kind of sit back and enjoy your content and maybe not have the critical analysis switch flip, that is part of Twitter burnout. When you spend any kind of time on Twitter, every statement is an argument. And every statement, you have to be ready to defend it, because somebody's going to come along and tell you in detail about how wrong you are. And so now when you're looking at stuff, you're kind of subconsciously thinking about, what is this? Why do I like it? Why do I think it's wrong? And you're writing a thesis in your mind.
right.
And that is so taxing.
Right, it is. It makes you tired. That's why people have to take breaks from social media, because why can't I just say I like it or I don't? And if you notice, many times I just leave my stuff at that, because I don't have anything to prove, because I understand, that I'm the one that gets to decide what I do and don't like, and I'm the one that gets to decide how I express that. So if you want to throw a tantrum and lose sleep yelling at me, whatever, doesn't have anything that you don't take away my free will. And this is what I keep trying to tell people, is you don't have to get into these long 3-day long arguments because somebody doesn't like what you said. Okay? Just say what you say, because you got a right to say what you say, and keep it moving. It's not even that big of a deal.
Yeah, it's the way to do. I pop onto Twitter like maybe twice a day, and not for very long. I go through like my notifications, I go through my messages on CC, and then like I just do a general thing like, hey, what's kicking off on Twitter? I remember like I can't remember who it was I was watching. They were talking about how they were like kind of getting further and further away from Twitter, and they made some comment, and somebody made some snide comment back, and then he saw it like the next day, and it's like, oh yeah, it's like, oh man, it took you 8 hours to think of something to say. It's like no, Jagoff, I went to work. I have a life outside of Twitter.
Yeah, how about that?
I'm not waiting around like for the next message to pop off so I can get back at you instantly.
And so, and again, to talk about that last scene, I will state it again. I want to state it unequivocally. You did not have a grown man kiss 12 and 13-year-old girls, even if it was a quote-unquote anecdote. No, they would sit still for that ever. Under any circumstance, they would say, he should have found a way to do it without kissing them. So we accept it when it's the other way around, which completely destroys the notion of equality. I don't want to hear it. It's not the same. You can't have it both ways. It is Ivy's modus operandi, and it is what we're used to her doing. And it was kind of cute and awkward and cringy and funny in every way that it could be, but it would not be acceptable. Let's say this was a scene in Breaking Bad. And let's say Walter had inadvertently poisoned a classroom full of freshman high school girls. And he said, the only way for me to get the antidote to you is I'm going to drink it, then I'm going to have to kiss you. That would have destroyed the show. You know what I'm saying? Because they would have said he should have found another way.
You should have spit in the flask.
I'm going to call it out every time I see it. Go ahead, Nemesis.
Yeah, it's like they'll say he should have. I mean, if we're really sitting here and analyzing it, she could have just spit in the flask,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I see what you're saying. I can't dispute that at all. It has become so commonplace, though, and that until you stop and think about it, sometimes it just kind of passes you by. It really does, and that's without. I don't want to go into even more detail, but yeah, it's definitely out there. It's interesting.
Well, we're numb to it because we've been conditioned to be so, and I refuse. I'm not going to be conditioned to ignore the obvious double standards in front of me all the time, because I too am a father. That post you made, Nemesis, the other day about, I think it was sending your girl to, was it prom?
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a winter formal, but yeah.
Okay. And just, there are things you go through as the father of a daughter that only other fathers, of daughters can understand. And watching your girl go from a little girl to a young woman and everything that that means. And the art of parenting is staying close enough to protect them, but also getting ready to let them go into their adult lives, because kids don't stay kids. And it's a very taxing, it's part of the pain of love, watching your children grow up and leave the nest. And because we know everything that means better than they do. And because I understand that process very, very well, I wouldn't, if my son was still little, I wouldn't want to show him a cartoon that puts the idea in his head that, some grown woman's going to kiss him or whatever. No, that's not okay. It's not okay for a grown man to do it to your sister, and it's not okay for a grown woman to do it to you. No, that's not funny. No.
Yeah. We could spend hours talking about different examples, but yeah, I definitely agree. And yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why this show upsets me so much, because Poison Ivy, Harley, we're really a DC house here. I mean, we like Marvel, but DC is our main continuity that we follow, our main company. And
no, you Nazi.
For the girls and I, especially with Batman villains, we share those, and we love looking at pictures and drawing them and everything. And it's like, I don't want to see this Harley, because that was something we all shared. My wife even shares in Harley; she loves it. And it's just not recognizable. I mean, so that's
it's funny you should say that. I was watching the Clownfish video TV video the other day on YouTube, and they were talking about the new Birds of Prey and how they won't let their daughter watch that movie, and they said they didn't want her to watch the Suicide Squad because of, the type of content it had, even though it was like PG-13. And they said they've literally heard like some of their daughter's friends who have seen the movie, and these are like 12, 13-year-old girls talking about like after seeing a Suicide Squad, like, oh man, it'd be so awesome to be a stripper, because there's a scene where Harley's a stripper in a club, and it's like, that's not what you want your daughter to be emulating. Like that is, as Chris Rock said it best, your job as a father is to keep your daughter off the pole. and you're failing if Harley Quinn is wanting to put your daughter on the pole.
See, now, just as an aside, and you know that I'm biased, but one of the more perfect characters or family of characters to deal with something like this would be Captain Marvel. And I mean the classic one, because I got no love for New 52 Shazam. That. But I'm talking about, if we're talking about Captain Marvel, we're dealing with a character that's both a child and a man. And then Mary and Freddie do not turn into adults. They turn into superpowered versions of themselves, which I've always thought was incredible. See, there's so many things I would want to write about. For example, like Captain Marvel Jr. is, Freddie Freeman is, I forgot if he has polio or if he had an accident, but he's on crutches, sometimes in a wheelchair, when he's not powered. And then when he becomes powered, then all of that goes away. I would have him interact with, like, maybe go to the future and go to the Legion of Superheroes like Supergirl did. Or maybe, what are their relationships with the Teen Titans? And maybe Robin could say, should Marvel be in the Justice League or should he be with us? Because Billy's our age. Right. But Marvel is Batman's age. What world does he live in? And there's so many interesting stories. Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel are powered by the same pantheon of gods. And, they have a lot in common, too. There's just so much there to explore that I would love to do. That would be, I think, a cooler way to deal with, what if you are in adolescence with superpowers? What does that mean for Mary? Because Mary turns into a superpowered version of herself. And I think that's one of the better examples of empowerment, that, I'm normal me, I'm Mary, but then I have the power of the gods. What do I do with that? What does that mean? So, that's why I love them so, because I think there's so many great story setups in that family. And they can be classy, they can be funny, they can be cute, they can have moral lessons, but it could be something that the whole family could watch. It would be something that as fathers, we could be interested in talking to our kids about, what would you do, son, if you had the power to take down all of your bullies, how would you use it? Would you do self-control? I mean, so many great conversations that are the conversations we have to have with this kind of content. I mean, do you see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, so I don't know, but I agree. We're taking one for the team. We're doing our jobs because we're geeks it in. We are 100% with Geeks for Life, man.
Yeah.
G4L.
Whatever the cost.
That's right.
I just
gotta
have
be
to
true
say,
to the nerdism.
I have not struggled to watch a show like this in a long time. So, yeah, I'm definitely hurting. I'm hurting.
I tell you, there are times I thought Teen Titans was a tough show for me to watch because there are episodes I was just like, God, I hate this right now. And then, it kind of redeemed itself here and there. I didn't like the dark theme of the show, being all super angsty. But like easily within the first 5 minutes of the first episode, I was like, oh God, I'm gonna hate this so much. It's already going there. Right. Like on the boat, like, hello, my fellow white people, and like we get all this money by fucking over the poor, and it's like, oh God, we're really doing this.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, they're trying to be South Park. But anyway, all right, on that note, we're going to wrap this episode up. And as we've said, those of you that are listening to the pod, as we've said many, many times, these are just our opinions. This is just, how we feel. If you're into it, if you like it, if you dig it, great. No worries. There's nobody's judging you or criticizing you personally, because we all believe in people enjoying the content that they like. But we are always going to be honest about, how we're responding to the content that's out there. And one note I want to throw in is that this is why I want to continue to encourage content creators to continue to make your stuff, make some new stuff. We need a variety of voices in the mix. There's nothing wrong with having many different perspectives, but we need many different perspectives.
Right.
We need people that have different things to say on the same subject. So I want to thank my guest host for tuning in and jumping on this pod and discussing this challenging cartoon. So I want to give a shout out of thanks to Bracey. Thanks so much, Jeff.
My pleasure, folks. We can agree to disagree and still be civil about it.
Amen, amen. And a shout out of thanks to Nemesis. Thanks so much, Dave.
Oh, no problem. And here's to praying. I am going to see Birds of Prey because I'm going to try and write a review on it. Please, please put Huntress in purple and have a cape by the end of the show. That's all.
I didn't even know Huntress was in there until a few days ago.
Oh man. Oh yeah. Okay, that's
can't recognize nobody.
Oh yeah. If we're gonna dissect that movie, man, that's gonna take a minute. All right. So that's it. We will see everybody next time on the next episode of Sloppy Spoilers. Spoilers.